Back in 2013, I played Injustice because it was made by NetherRealm Studios, not because of it being a DC video game. At the time, I was freshly out of high school and I wasn't particularly interested in the DC universe. That would start to change with Batman Arkham Asylum, but I played that game at the end of 2013, and while it made me like Batman and his Rogues Gallery, I wasn't exactly sold on the extended DC universe. Mortal Kombat 9 blew me away in 2011, and I'd been a huge fan of Boone's work since I was 9, meaning I was willing to look past my disinterest in the characters since MK9 made me want more of NRS's style of fighting game. Injustice didn't exactly disappoint, and it made me want to know more about DC's catalog of heroes and villains, and it is because of this game that I went out of my way to watch Justice League Unlimited, and the Superman animated series from the 90s. Injustice's main campaign has some particularly high moments, such as when Superman kills Joker at the beginning and Lex Luthor later on. The core premise of Superman going rogue is great, and that story backdrop provides this game with a pretty great setup for an awesome set of arcade endings. You're watching Rayl Deal Games, and in this video, I'll be ranking every Injustice arcade ending from worst to best. Over the course of making 11 of these arcade endings videos, I've always felt my ordering of the endings are well thought out and accurate to the lore of the franchise and my personal feelings regarding them. With Injustice, I have to admit that I'm fairly ignorant of a lot of DC's broader lore. I'm definitely on the casual side of the DC spectrum, so I'm sure some of my rankings for a few of these endings lack the context of being super informed regarding the full extent of DC Comics lore. With all of that established, let's dive right in. Number 30.
Mere days after returning to his Earth, Green Lantern, in an event mirroring his ascension to the core, witnessed the crash landing of an alien ship. Investigating the wreckage, he encountered the pilot, who claimed to be Abin Sur. But this Abin Sur wore no power ring, and referred to him in halting breaths as the Almighty One. Green Lantern tried to convince the alien of their past, that Abin Sur had named Hal Jordan his successor as the Green Lantern of Sector 2814. But the alien died from his wounds before Lantern could learn more of him. Lantern left immediately for Oa. The Guardians were his only hope of solving this mystery.
I would have preferred if we followed Evil Hal in this ending, since that's the Green Lantern that appears in Injustice 2. And since the cliffhanger nature of this ending screams that NRS planned to make a sequel for this game, they should have done a better job of setting up the conflict for the next game. Midway's MK team was great at this with Deadly Alliance and Deception, but NRS during this time wasn't the greatest at doing this. MK9 was fairly bad at creating a connection to its next game, and Injustice has the same issue with its suite of endings. This Green Lantern ending doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me either. I'm not sure if this references a plotline from the comics, but exclusively given the context of Injustice, this is just an extremely weak ending. This ending is somehow less interesting than Green Lantern's MK vs. DC one, and that game only has a handful of good endings in general. Number 29.
The battle over, Grundy eluded capture and returned to his swamp to heal his wounds. During regeneration, Grundy found he could channel the elemental force of the red. All animal life would bend to his rule. His increased power also allowed him to resurrect the long-lost gray force. Now, instead of ruling Earth's creatures, he could simply destroy them. After defeating the world's heroes, Grundy turned Earth into his version of paradise. He now rules over a gray and lifeless planet.
What is the red? What is the gray force? If he controls the animals, why would he then kill them all to create a dead world? Grundy is just this big stupid zombie in the story, so there's some real tonal whiplash between the representation of him in the story versus in this ending. Number 28.
Superman had been a fool to believe Bane would willingly accept a subordinate role in the One Earth government. With the High Counselor out of the way, true leadership could begin. Bane found in Sinestro and Black Adam inspiring examples of ruthless, absolute authority. They reciprocated his regard for their talents. The three former villains regained control of the planet and formed a ruling triad that would be uninterrupted until the next phase of Bane's plans.
I don't really like endings that function as cliffhangers for plot points that never happen. The implication here is that Bane gets rid of the other two to take power for himself, but considering this is not the canon ending of the game, this ending becomes mostly meaningless. Number 27.
After Superman's defeat, Cyborg led the assault on the Fortress of Solitude to flush out remnants of the High Counselor's regime. The fortress was well defended, the battle intense. Cyborg was forced to use unfamiliar Kryptonian tools to make repairs to his damaged cybernetics. Enhanced with the alien technology, Cyborg found he could communicate with Superman's androids and order them to apprehend the opposition. With his army of super androids, Cyborg will bring justice to the world.
It would have been better for Cyborg to reflect on his changes and origin as a Titan, perhaps alongside Raven in his ending, and my issues with this one are the same as my problems with Bane's. Cyborg's character is going through an arc that just doesn't matter here. Number 26.
Free of his brainwashing, Hawkgirl exacted revenge on the High Counselor for murdering her husband, Hawkman. She was nevertheless sent to prison for her role in the regime. One night, she awoke hovering above her cot, glowing with eldritch light. An instant later, she stood at the bottom of a shallow crater. There, she found the source of the light, a meteorite of pure nth metal. As she touched it, the meteorite sprung to life, encasing her in nth metal. The new armor made Hawkgirl invincible. Her first act? Vengeance against those who had helped Superman capture Hawkman.
It seems to me that if someone does bad things as a result of mind control, they shouldn't be held responsible for the crimes committed during that mind-controlled state. It wouldn't be the first time that the DC heroes have dealt with one of their own being a victim of mind control either, so I don't really understand why Hawkgirl has to answer for her crimes when someone like Superman doesn't whenever he's controlled in different continuities. Number 25.
Following the events in the parallel dimension, Shazam's fellow heroes returned home. But an alien virus contracted during the transfer created in them acute mental instability. They turned on their fellow crime fighters in a deranged fury. Alone and desperate, Shazam shared the power of the Word with his adopted brothers and sisters. Their purity of heart gave them courage. The army of Shazam incapacitated the former heroes. Eventually, they took the place of the Justice League as primary defenders of Earth.
I don't buy for a second that Shazam could take down the rest of the Justice League, considering the way Superman melts his brain in the story. That being said, the ending is a good one for him. Number 24.
Nightwing had beaten his former boss, Superman, in single combat. Not even Batman had done that. His thirst for conflict grew. He began challenging anyone who crossed his path. Nightwing's belligerence eventually drew the attention of Sinestro. His corps was always in need of new recruits, and the young humans seemed able to inspire great fear. Sinestro had his suspicions confirmed when a yellow power ring found its way onto Nightwing's finger.
Damian Wayne becoming a Yellow Lantern is in keeping with his character, but I would have preferred some interactions between him and Batman in his ending instead. Number 23.
When Superman's One Earth regime proved to be a failure similar to his on Korrigar, Sinestro retreated to deep space to ruminate on its demise. Fear had long seemed the most powerful of the emotions with which to bring order to the universe, yet it had not been enough. Desperate, Sinestro hurled the might of the Sinestro Corps against the life entity, keeper of the White Power Battery. Ultimately victorious, Sinestro now wielded the power of a White Lantern. No adversary could possibly withstand him. The light of the Green Lantern Corps would be the first he would extinguish.
I'll be honest, I don't really know anything about the Lantern lore in the DC universe. I get that each is tied to a powerful emotion, but where does this White Lantern, godlike figure come into the picture? Why are the Green Lanterns presented as heroes over the red, pink, and whatever other colors exist? I would have preferred if this ending had made Sinestro take over Earth or something like that. I'm sure this White Lantern thing is important and a better ending for him though, or at least I assume so. Number 22.
The fool in the red cape had been dealt with. Now Scorpion would learn how he came to this place. Heretofore, only the sorcerer Quan Chi or the fallen elder god Shinnok could have summoned him. Scorpion's answers appeared in the form of Trigon, who accused Scorpion of deserting Trigon's demon army and stealing from him the glory of besting the High Counselor. The two faced each other in a titanic struggle. Scorpion emerged the victor and assumed control of Trigon's invasion force. Soon this strange new land would be his to rule.
I'm much more of a Mortal Kombat fan than a DC Universe one, and that's why I know for a fact that this ending makes no sense for the character in question. Boone's favorite MK character is Scorpion, which is why he got such a major glow up during the NRS era of games. But even with that in mind, there's no way he'd be able to beat Trigun. Even if he did, Scorpion has literally no motivation to want to rule an army of demons either. It would have been much better to have his ending involve Quan Chi sending him to the Injustice world itself to avoid Scorpion's vengeance, and then ending with him getting back to the Netherrealm and finishing off Quan Chi for good. Number 21.
Free of Superman's control, Doomsday eradicated the remaining metahumans. He then manipulated technology in the abandoned Fortress of Solitude to terraform the Earth. It soon resembled prehistoric Krypton. At last, it felt like home. After a few years of exterminating humanity at his leisure, however, Doomsday needed a challenge. Having assimilated Superman's ability to fly, he headed for a nearby space sector. He had heard rumors of an opponent worthy of his attention, a Caesarian mercenary with a taste for violence. Doomsday was eager to meet this Lobo in battle.
I really like the beginning of Doomsday's ending, where he makes Earth uninhabitable for the people living there, killing everything. The part where the ending starts to decrease in value for me is the instant it's turned into marketing for what would be the future DLC of Injustice. Number 20.
There was no shortage of vendettas during Superman's reign, and no shortage of bounties for Lobo to collect. He became one of the richest men in the universe by assassinating those who ran afoul of the High Counselor. Lobo's already massive ego inflated along with his rising wealth. Lobo searched for an assignment worthy of his abilities. With so many super-powered beings already dead at his hand, however, bounties were scarce. Lobo decided to use his wealth to create his own ultimate contract. He would kill the denizens of New Genesis, home of the new gods.
Back in high school, I used to be sweet on this girl, and Lobo was her favorite DC character. While I did enjoy hearing her talk about him, it was more because of the girl talking than the character himself. I do like the shot of the heroes' skulls being lined up with their masks on and portraits framing the backdrop, but because I don't really understand or like Lobo, I can't get behind the idea that he's able to kill all of them. If he really was the main man, you'd think he'd show up in the main game. Number 19.
At last, Superman had paid for what he had done to Catwoman. Feigning allegiance to his regime had cost Selina her beloved Batman and her best chance at happiness. Pride and anger kept her from attempting reconciliation with Bruce Wayne, but his inspiring reconstruction of Gotham and Metropolis fostered in her a desire to remain close to him. Until she was ready to approach him again, she did her part to keep Gotham's streets clear of crime. Nascent underworld organizations had both the Bat and the Cat to fear.
While Selina's behavior doesn't feel quite right for her character, I have always liked the romance between the Cat and the Bat. Injustice 2's Catwoman is better at representing her character, however, I do prefer this one after everything is considered. Number 18.
Not all heroes were destroyed by Superman. Some were actually created by him. A technology wizard, Barbara Gordon had eluded detection by One Earth intelligence, feeding information to the insurgency under the code name Oracle. But after the regime's murder of her father, Gotham Police Commissioner James Gordon, Barbara channeled her anger into a new alter ego. Sensing the right opportunity to strike, she attacked Superman directly. By defeating the High Counselor, she had announced Batgirl to the world in impressive fashion.
Batgirl existed long before this Injustice continuity, and I don't really like how this ending sounds like the launch of a new character. I would have preferred seeing her interact with Batman or reflect on Dick Grayson's death. I'm alright with her taking down the regime, I just feel it could have been done in a more interesting way. Number 17.
After the fall of Superman, Green Arrow visited the Star City of this parallel Earth. His counterpart was one of the first heroes to fall in the battle against Superman, one of the first to object to the Man of Steel's new tactics and reasoning. A memorial erected in Star City's Orchid Bay served as a reminder of the need to fight oppression regardless of the odds. There, Green Arrow found that one citizen wasn't content to memorialize Oliver Queen in stone. With Green Arrow's training, a new Archer, dressed in crimson, took up the fallen hero's mantle. Let Star City's criminals beware. The night belongs to Red Arrow.
Green Arrow training up a prodigy to leave behind in the broken world of Superman's fallen regime is a great way of representing how Oliver Queen would take essentially seeing his own memorial stone. I don't know what the dead Green Arrow was thinking trying to take Superman on all on his own, but it is heroic, and themes of heroism matter more than sense in superhero stories. Number 16.
Flash had taken down the High Counselor, but the atrocities he had abetted during Superman's regime continued to haunt him. His shame eventually drove him into exile. Whether wishing to make further amends or simply unable to stop himself, Flash continued to use his powers in the pursuit of justice. Rumors of a mysterious red streak of energy that would set upon and incapacitate criminals circulated throughout Central City. While only some deduced his true name, most felt gratitude and affection for the new hero they called the Ghost.
Atrocities are mentioned a few times in the endings of this game, but I've never actually known what the writers are referring to here. Considering the game in a vacuum, the only atrocity Superman did was create a tyrannical government, and while that's bad, we never get to see how the lives of the people are impacted. Are they better than what existed before? They are definitely safer, but are they happier? Denying freedom always seems like Superman's primary crime in Injustice, but I wish the game would have shown some of the atrocities his regime commits. It's clear Superman isn't a good guy because he kills Green Arrow and Shazam without due cause, but arguably, his killing of Lex Luthor and Joker are justified. If there's any DC superfans watching this video right now, please share some of the war crimes Superman perpetrated in this comic series. I'd love to hear more about it because this is my favorite iteration of DC's characters. Flash's ending itself is pretty alright. He essentially just restarts his career, and considering the guilt he feels as being a part of the regime, this is a great ending for him. I like seeing characters redeem themselves with hard work, and this ending does great work as setting up the Flash we'd see in Injustice 2. Number 15.
Wonder Woman returned home to find her dimension in ruins. Aware of Superman's despotic rule of the parallel dimension, the gods of Olympus vowed to preemptively eliminate the metahuman scourge from their world. Under the direction of Zeus, they hunted down and eliminated nearly all superpowered mortals. All that remained to oppose them was Themyscira. Wonder Woman and her Amazons fought back against the Olympians with unrelenting courage. Despite heavy losses, Wonder Woman's forces ultimately prevailed. They took reign as the new Olympians, ushering in an age of peace and prosperity.
When I first played Injustice 10 or so years ago, I was almost entirely ignorant of DC comic book lore, so when I saw Greek deities are canon in the DC universe, I was a little shocked. Seeing the way the gods of Olympus devastate the world of the good heroes just because of Superman's duplicates' tyrannous actions makes total sense for them. Wonder Woman taking them out and becoming a Zeus-tier god high on Olympus is great for her and the best outcome her world could expect given turn the situation. Number 14.
Killer Frost reveled in her victory, but her overconfidence betrayed her. Seizing the opportunity, agents of Star Labs captured her. Their scientists harnessed her freezing power in order to fortify the world's polar ice caps. But Star Labs underestimated Frost's abilities. Turning on her captors, she froze their facility and eventually the entire Western Hemisphere. The survivors now struggle to overthrow the self-proclaimed Ice Queen.
If half the world suddenly froze, I don't think there'd be a lot of survivors. There definitely wouldn't be enough to usurp Killer Frost's control, and at that point, I'd just try escaping to the other side of the world. Number 13.
Victory over Superman was only the beginning of Aquaman's rise to power. Uniting the world's oceans under the banner of Atlantis, Aquaman had a controlling interest in the planet's ecology and economy. His influence did not escape the attention of the world's multinational corporations, who looked to end his reign. Villains lured by the promise of big money to assassinate the King of Atlantis pursued him relentlessly. But Aquaman's popularity served him well. The world's citizens rose up in anger against those who would quell Aquaman's influence. The threat abated, a groundswell of support began for a united Earth under Aquaman's command.
This ending is kind of ironic since Aquaman was consistently the butt of every superhero joke when I was growing up. No one thought Aquaman was cool, and this game and the Momoa movies have done a lot to shift everyone's impression of him. He's still one of my least favorite DC characters, but this ending is just good in a vacuum. Number 12.
Though he had failed to elevate the Joker clan's status, Joker was convinced a similar organization could be successful in his dimension. Joker used a series of devastating terrorist acts to frighten the populace, then convinced the more gullible among them that he was the path to security. The new Joker clan soon had millions of members worldwide and committed regular anti-government attacks, wreaking havoc on the global economy.
Watching the world burn is where Joker's joy lies, and I wouldn't want any ending with him doing anything else. Number 11.
Winning the battle with Superman cost Raven dearly. The amount of demonic energy required overwhelmed her. After regaining consciousness, she looked around warily. Her immediate surroundings were a hellish ruin. Nearby stood her father, Trigon. Raven had somehow called him forth during her battle. Trigon thanked his daughter. He then summoned an army of demons and set out to destroy the rest of the planet.
This world is screwed. In the Injustice story, Raven is secretly working for Trigon while serving Superman, and while I would have preferred if the ending showed that, I do like the idea of her fighting against Superman and accidentally letting Trigon out as a result. What a sordid destiny for the denizens of this Earth, though. They get 1 single second of freedom from Superman before being killed by an invasion of demons. And the worst part is that even if Superman were still around, there's no guarantee he'd be able to put Trigon down. If Injustice 3 ever does get made, I'd like this particular plot point to be revisited. It would be cool to see the heroes of that game have to let Superman out of the Phantom Zone in order to have a chance against the Demon King. Number 10.
Superman's defeat did not work to Ares' advantage as he had planned. The heroes of the parallel dimension helped this world's Batman build a conflict-free utopia that left the war god famished. On the brink of death, Ares managed to imprison Brainiac 5. He forced Brainiac to create a time loop beginning with the other dimensional heroes' arrival and ending just before their victory. In this pocket of time, Ares flourished. Endless war was his to savor.
DC's interpretation of Ares' character is quite good, honestly. I like how he needs conflict in order to survive, and an infinite time loop creating the perfect smorgasbord of violence is the best ending this character could have gotten. I especially like how this ending mentions the main villain of the next game, in addition to being incredibly unique. Number 9.
Banishing his friend and former teammate Superman to the Phantom Zone was difficult for John Jones, but necessary. As the One Earth regime had formed, Jean, ever the outsider, had chosen to watch from a distance to bide his time. He assumed the form of an Atlantean and served as royal archivist. Aquaman little suspected that his trusted subjects' uncanny ability to gather news of the surface world was the result of telepathic powers. When Jean learned that heroes from a parallel dimension were aiding Batman's insurgency, he assisted as well, leading rescue operations in Metropolis and Gotham after Superman's rampage. In the post-regime era, the Martian Manhunter continued to serve his adopted world, gathering the next generation of heroes to form a new Justice League.
I watched Justice League and Justice League Unlimited because of Injustice, and I appreciate this Martian Manhunter ending much more as a result. It's crazy that Martian Manhunter doesn't show up in Injustice 2 because he is a great character, and I'd like to see him have more of a place in the main conflict of a future Injustice title. Number 8.
With Superman's regime toppled, new governments formed to take its place. New governments meant new customers for Deathstroke, and business was booming. Soon there were more assassinations to carry out, revolutions to aid, and unrest to create than he could manage on his own. The One Earth regime's elite troopers, having committed atrocities in Superman's name, had gone into hiding from a populace bent on revenge. Impossible for most to find, but not for Deathstroke. Recruiting these renegades, he formed the New Titans, the world's premier political assassins.
This Deathstroke ending is just a better version of his versus DC 1. It is much, much better though, because it fits the character's aspirations and motivations better. Slade Wilson has been one of my favorite DC villains since I used to watch Teen Titans as a kid, and it is nice to finally see him win for a change. Number 7.
The defeat of Superman was a relief to Zatanna. During the regime, she and Dr. Fate had taken advantage of Superman's vulnerability to magic and turned the Tower of Fate into a sanctuary for Superman's enemies. She had saved many lives, but years of subterfuge weighed heavily upon her. After the regime's downfall, Zatanna was instrumental in restraining metahumans during their trials. But when a jury recommended the death penalty for the more immutable defendants, Zatanna intervened. She took the prisoners to the Tower of Fate. There they would remain, incarcerated, but alive.
One of the core themes of comic book stories is the idea of preserving life at all costs, and a pushback against this ideology creates the core crux of Injustice's plot. Zatanna's magical realm, functioning as a safety zone against Superman and as a life-preserving prison, is pretty cool, and even though I don't necessarily agree with Zatanna's idealistic preservation of life in spite of heinous crimes, I do respect her conviction and devotion to her ethical ideals. Number 6.
Free of the Phantom Zone at last, Zod's first order of business, Superman's defeat, had been accomplished. Now his revenge could be fully realized. His time in the Phantom Zone had allowed Zod to learn its secrets. He had even learned from one of his fellow residents how to call forth small pockets of it at will. After introducing Superman to its mind-numbing emptiness, Zod claimed the High Counselorship and began to rebuild Earth in the image of mighty Krypton.
Krypton used to be a utopia, so it might not be all bad that General Zod rebuilds the world in its image. The people of Earth would get access to better technology and a great social setup too. What might be bad is Zod being the leader, since he gives off the vibe of being a militaristic fanatic. Number 5.
A win against this world's Superman was greatly satisfying, but its aftermath would be sweeter still. Luthor had traveled to this dimension to convince its residents that he was their Luthor, who had miraculously survived the High Counselor's globally televised attack on him. Beloved before, the triumphant Luthor was now worshipped. He was elected President of the United States, but soon looked to further consolidate his power.
For nearly all of Injustice, the player only sees the good Lex Luthor of the regime's world. Considering how Luthor dies during the main campaign of the game, I really like that this ending is the original Lex Luthor taking over the world in his alter ego's place. Lex is just the archetype of the evil billionaire made manifest, and this is the most Bezos move the man could make. Number 4.
The defeat of Superman taught Black Adam one thing. Most of Earth's denizens were too weak to adopt Kandak's visionary form of government. He returned to his homeland with a new plan. Combining their energies, Black Adam and his Empress Isis created a mystical barrier around Kandak. There they reigned in peace, their country an oasis in the wasteland of human civilization. A true oasis once Black Adam had destroyed all other life on Earth.
Villains rarely get to win in fiction, and something I've always liked about video games like this is how we're able to see what the villains do post-victory. Black Adam making Kahndaq the only livable place in the world, rather than allow the rest of the world to live in peace and free, is a great one for his character because it matches his goals and his brutality quite well. Number 3.
Following the battle to liberate Earth, Batman learned that Luthor had bequeathed his massive fortune to Bruce Wayne. He now had the means to rebuild Gotham and Metropolis. The city's residents, inspired by their hero's efforts, adopted the slogan, "We are Batman." They contributed countless hours to their community's renovation and crime prevention. The Batman of old would have stubbornly assumed these tasks alone. The post-One Earth Batman, having been rewarded for his trust in others, enjoyed his city's renewal and his role as its benefactor.
The final frame of this ending, with the way Bruce's bat costume is his reflection, is quite good. I like how Bruce no longer has to stay in the shadows in order to accomplish the peace he's always fought so hard to create. The Lex Luthor of this world is quite cool too, and I wish we could have seen more of their camaraderie in the main campaign of this game. Number 2.
The defeat of Superman filled Harley with confidence. She knew what she was capable of and knew what she wanted. She traveled to the Visitor's Earth and freed the Joker from prison. Returning to her world, they married in a ceremony that set Gotham ablaze. At the reception, the cake-cutting ceremony took a gruesome turn. As her new husband playfully mashed her face into the cake, years of abuse took its toll. Something in Harley snapped. She used the ceremonial knife to slash Joker's throat. Still wearing her wedding gown, Harley now resides permanently in Arkham Asylum.
Harley is my favorite DC character, and my favorite arc she goes through is when she moves away from the Joker. How abuse affects people is something I'm personally familiar with, and Harley Quinn is uniquely positioned in a place to tell stories regarding the suffering of abuse and the healing process afterward. Number 1.
Though pleased with the outcome, Superman's battle with his duplicate left him troubled. If one Superman could go so far astray, why not another? Preventative measures were in order. After much discussion with his fellow Justice Leaguers, Superman ingested a remote-release kryptonite capsule. At any sign of instability, the kryptonite would permeate his body, killing him. The question of who could trigger the device was solved democratically. Each week, a different Leaguer would take possession of its remote control. Only Batman was denied a shift.
I love the way it is implied that Batman always has control of Superman's kill switch, and the way Superman willingly creates a way for him to be killed if he ever leaves the hero's path is perhaps the coolest thing he's ever done. It takes serious trust in the rest of the Justice League for him to do this sort of thing, though I don't think he thought this through that well. If one of those other Justice Leaguers decides to go rogue, they would just need to wait for their Superman shift in order to ensure a higher success rate for their villainy. Despite that, this is the best ending in Injustice. And that's the video, my guys. What's your favorite Injustice ending? Let me know in the comment section below, and while you're there, please like, share, and subscribe. My video ranking each of the Injustice 2 endings is coming soon. If you have a moment right now, you may like one of my other videos on the screen. Regardless of what you choose to do, have an awesome day, gamers.